Love is a Battlefield, episode
12.
12.
All right, so what we want to talk about today is things that girls don't understand about guys. And girls, if you start to understand how guys think and how guys act, it's actually going to give you a huge advantage in finding the type of relationship that you want. So the first thing we want to talk about is all guys are trying really hard.
This is true.
Even if it seems like they're not. If it seems like they're not trying hard, all that means is that he's kind of experienced and kind of knows the lay of the land a little bit, so he knows not to look like a tryhard.
However, there are some situations where, this is going back to congruency. Can we talk about
That's
this?
fine, yeah, we can bring some high stuff back.
Going back to congruency. If a guy says all this stuff about liking you, wanting to do things with you, and then never actually messages you to plan anything or do any of those things, that probably means he doesn't like you. Yeah.
So I think what he's saying is like when you're trying to contact a guy and he's not really getting back to you, that's probably not him trying to appear to not try hard.
That's him just not caring at all.
Yeah. So there's a difference between trying to appear to not care and not caring. So you should also know that. If somebody's not getting back to you and doesn't show up on time, that usually actually really means they don't care. It's not that they're trying to not look like they're trying.
Yeah.
This is getting very complicated. but you understand what we're saying here.
It's a couple levels deep.
Yeah, there's a couple levels deep. So there's the guys that seem like they're trying hard. All guys are trying hard, period. And then some guys don't care. Of the guys that are trying hard, they are always trying hard. Of the guys that are trying hard, there are two varieties. One variety is you can tell that he's trying hard. The other variety is you can't really tell that he's trying hard. Everything seems smooth. Everything just seems to go according to plan. But he's actually trying really hard. In his mind, he's thinking about the things that you're going to do, what you're going to say, what he could say that seems like it would be funny. Things like if you guys are on a date where you guys could go, when he should kiss you. Like there's so many different variables going on in a guy's head that you have to try hard to get anything done. So I also think that women should kind of like respect that in a way.
Never happens.
Because sometimes it happens.
Very rarely.
Usually more in relationships. But guys, even if the result is terrible, the guy is actually trying really hard to make things go right. So it's just something that you should appreciate. Second thing is
emotion.
Yeah, male emotions.
Emotions. So guys do have some emotions, but it's much, much less than the vast majority of women.
Yeah.
And
very muted.
Yes. And oftentimes we don't show these emotions, but that doesn't mean that we don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not necessarily in our interests to express these emotions, or it just isn't necessary.
And men and women grow up in very different environments, and in environments where men grow up, you're very much at a disadvantage if you show emotions, which is ultimately probably a good thing. So, work needs to get done. You need to focus on the objective. People venting or coping or other things isn't always necessary in male spaces.
Yeah, emotion doesn't get anything done. When you introduce emotion into a situation, 99% of the time it'll just make things worse.
Right. And this is for men, so emotions do have a place. They're healthy things. It's just on the male side, they are not usually helpful. And in male groups, we don't at all try to share our emotions. It's not something that we find interesting, and it's something that I think can actually hurt a male group dynamic. We definitely kind of put a lid on those emotions and deal with them in a logical way. And I think actually that's pretty healthy for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
I think.
Nobody wants to be the dramatic person in a group.
Mm-hmm.
People usually kind of reject that kind of attitude.
And I'm not saying no emotions ever.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's just very limited compared to women. So emotionality is a larger part of your average woman's world than it is a part of your average man's world. So just remember that when dealing with men, don't expect to see, identify, or share a lot of emotions with the guy that you're with.
And then, in some cases when a guy actually does show emotion, it's taken very badly. It's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And that actually makes the girl not interested in the guy.
Yeah, there's a. I think this is kind of counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but when guys do show emotions, especially to women, sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it can strengthen a relationship. But I would say, actually, most of the time, what it does is make the woman desire the man less, subconsciously. So that's kind of a weird thing to think about, because I don't think most people really think about that
Yeah.
or even agree with that. But I'm just saying this is a phenomenon that I've seen countless times in countless relationships, and not just with myself, but with other people that I can see. That
Yeah.
once the guy opens up, that the woman actually loses interest in the guy.
Yeah, usually opening up is a sign of a close relationship, and that might be the case, but in a lot of situations it does actually work against you.
As a guy.
Yeah.
So just something for women to keep in mind. Again, just don't expect a lot of excessive emotional engagement with the guy you're with. You're with him for a lot of reasons, and one of them probably isn't to share all your emotions with him all the time. So third thing is men are much more about focus. So when a guy is into one activity, he's pretty much invested all of his focus on it, and he can really focus hard on stuff. For example, just to take one example I'm sure that everybody's familiar with, a guy can focus on a video game for hours, maybe even days, and not think or do anything else besides that.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that just kind of gives you a little window into the intensity of male focus, of how they can almost obsess about things.
Or when you guys are talking about guys and girls, talking about them as like a population, because there could be like individual girls who will actually can focus on video games for hours on end. And like I feel like there's probably just gonna be people out there like, oh, what are you talking about? Like I can study, I can like look at video games and play them for years on end. But you're looking at populations, and I think the population of there's like a natural curve with like a population of guys and a population of girls, and for like any attribute or any trait like agreeableness or like things like focus, like you'll have like a pretty big overlap between the guys and the girls, but then there's also like a lot of like the two like normal distributions that are not aligned. So it's like on average, like we're saying on average guys are like for I don't know, agreeableness. Like on average, like guys are probably less agreeable than girls. But then there's a lot of guys who are equally as agreeable as a lot of girls. But I think like that is just a notion that should be taken into account. All right.
Yeah, for example, if you look at the most disagreeable people, they're going to be overrepresented men. If you look at the most agreeable people, those are going to be overrepresented women. It's an idea that comes from Jordan Peterson. You should look him up on YouTube. He has a lot of good knowledge to share. Yeah, so women tend to like to switch it up more. They can low-level multitask a lot better. And they are a lot more people-focused. Whereas when men focus, they're focusing usually on things or systems.
But at the same time, this isn't to say that women cannot focus on things.
Yeah, there's a lot of women that can focus on stuff, but just for most people out there in your average relationships and meeting average people out there, the lay of the land is that it's going to usually be the guy that's playing video games or working on his car or doing whatever hobby, photography or whatever he has, a lot more in a focused fashion than the girl who has got other things going on. And a lot of times girls get frustrated in this because it doesn't seem like he's spending time on her or he's forgetting her, things like that. But I think one thing that would help women with the relationships with guys is that just realizing that guys have this tendency to really focus intensely on one thing at a time. That can be frustrating for women who tends to multitask different tasks all at the same time, or who can use their advanced communication ability to listen to two conversations at the same time with no problem. Just realize that most men can't do that. Most men actually use their focus to get very deep on one thing at one time. So it's kind of like two different complementary systems. So realize that when he's doing something, he's focused on that one thing. And for him to be able to accomplish positive stuff, to be able to do what he wants to do, he needs to finish that one thing sequentially and move on to the next thing, which is kind of the opposite of how a lot of women do things.
Yeah, and another thing with this focus is often misconstrued as not being interested in their partner or their girlfriend, and that is absolutely not the case.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say to your boyfriend or the guy that you're focusing on this, you're not interested in me, that is very, very bad.
Yeah, that's not good. That's like, from a guy's perspective, that's like a very corrosive type of nagging. What you should do is, you should not use negative incentives like that. You should actually use positive incentives. Be like, after you're done with the thing that you're doing now, because I know you're focused on it, let's go do X after. Or let's do this good thing after. And that'll actually give you a good little insight into his mind, too. That'll kind of give you a little information on where your priority is. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't like spending time with you. Fourth, men don't care about the details. They really, really don't. Men have, because they tend to focus on things sequentially and handle one thing at a time, to get it done, go on to the next thing, and they tend to remember what they think is important, which is going to be different between a girl and a guy. He's not going to remember your friends' names. He's not going to remember the names of your friends' babies. It's very difficult for him to remember what your anniversary date is. Like, all these things in the end are actually really not that important. But women remember them primarily because they are people-focused and they show that they are invested in another person. That may be true or it may not be true. But men just don't think like that. So when he doesn't remember the details on stuff, it would definitely behoove you to let him go on that.
Yeah.
Because it's just not how our brain works.
Yeah. In a lot of early relationships, girls will go back and say, oh, do you remember our second date or third date? And the guy will be like, whoa, I don't remember anything.
Yeah, nothing. And if he said, a lot of times we actually lie. And we're like, yeah, we just kind of fake it till we make it. And we're just like, yeah, I remember that place. And he's like, yeah, the restaurant was X. And be like, yeah, X. That was great. So
food was delicious.
Yeah, you would be surprised. Like, if you could actually go into the guy's mind, you would be surprised with the amount of stuff in that realm that he doesn't know. Because it's not necessary to him providing, working, doing his hobbies, and being with you. If you think about it, that's actually is all extraneous information. It has use, but it is extraneous information from his point of view. So I really wouldn't... It's not worth fighting about, because you're essentially fighting over the nature of men and women, which is never going to change.
Yeah, and guys also don't share a lot of information about dates or anything, really.
Yeah,
So,
they don't.
For instance, we will not talk about what the girl wore on her date. We will not talk about what the song was. We will not talk about any of this stuff. Whereas girls do talk about these things.
The girls do talk about that stuff. Girls actually talk about dating, relationships, and sex and guys a lot more than guys talk about dating, relationships, sex, and women. Most guys don't actually really talk about it almost at all. So it's not like we have... It's not like we're talking about that stuff as a normal topic and we remember and we remind ourselves every so often. It just never comes up.
Yeah.
So, again, something that you should probably just let go.
If something crazy happens, I might say, I had a crazy date the other day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Something like way out of the norm happens.
Yeah, but aside from that, probably not going to remember that much.
Yeah, definitely not. 5. Ultimately, men don't need people. This is another thing that's a huge difference with women. Women draw strength from people. A lot of their primary focus is on people. But occasionally, guys in their lives don't need people. And it'll actually hurt them if they have to interact with people. So let's say, if things are going on in his life and he's having a hard time at work or the family or whatever, and you don't think he's paying a lot of attention to you or he's not spending a lot of time with you, that's actually natural. He needs to deal with stuff on his own. When men get angry or they're going through a tough time, they need to spend time alone.
Yep.
They need to figure it out on their own. They don't need to talk to anybody. That could actually slow down the process of solving this issue that he's confronted with.
It will oftentimes make it worse.
It'll oftentimes make it worse. So if your guy is going through a hard time, or something else is going on and you're not sure, just let him spend some time alone.
Yeah.
And figure stuff out and then come back. Sometimes this was in Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. The author is escaping right now. It's a really good book. The author says that sometimes men just need to go and hibernate. They need to go and fix stuff on their own, and you have to let them do that. The more you interfere with that, the longer you are going to drag out the coping or solution problem-solving process, and it's not going to be good for either side.
And when he feels like he needs assistance, if that happens, he will directly ask.
Yeah, he's not going to be afraid to ask. He's not like one of your friends that are girls that is going to mope around, wait to see if you ask to gauge how invested you are in her and all that other stuff. Men are more direct in that way. We can't read your mind because we are not women. We don't have advanced communication abilities. We communicate to the content of the message, not the context.
Right.
Is this 6?
Yeah.
You want to introduce 6?
What is it? We can't. All right, number 6.
Right. Example right here.
Number 6. We cannot read your mind.
This is a big one.
Huge.
So one thing you have to keep in mind is women have an extremely sophisticated and advanced communication ability. A lot of times women aren't even communicating with the words that they're using. They're communicating through the implied context of what they are saying and how it would be taken in a situation. I'm not saying that men can't understand this. They can. However, most of the time they will miss implied meaning. Most of the time, when women are talking, a guy is going to miss maybe even the most important part of what those girls are saying. I said before in this video, a lot of women, most women, can listen to 2 conversations or even more at once, keep track of both, and be in their own conversation.
Guys struggle with that.
Men cannot do that.
Yeah.
Men can't listen to two conversations at once. Some men can. Some men have a more developed communicative ability, but the majority definitely do not. I mean, I can't listen to 2 conversations at once while I'm in one. This is just not ever going to happen. So when women communicate with guys, usually what they do is they talk to guys like they do their girlfriends. They don't change the way they communicate. And that is, you're damaging your relationship and hurting your chances of getting a relationship if that's what you do.
And guys also sometimes don't change the way they communicate.
Yeah, guys don't.
And that can be problematic for a relationship as well. So something that I've seen with a lot of my friends that are female is this idea of vibing together. So a lot of them don't really say anything to each other. It's just kind of like a conglomeration of emotions, and they all afterwards say, "Oh, we had a really good conversation." And I was there, and I'm kind of confused about what the outcome of the conversation was. I don't really know what the ultimate goal is or what they really even talked about when it came to content. It's just they came to some kind of decision and I didn't understand at all.
Right. I mean, I've been in the same situation. Guys, don't expect if you're a girl and you're talking to a guy and you're talking to how you normally talk to girls, don't expect the guy to understand what you're actually saying. This is the same thing when the guy talks to the girl and he says, "What's wrong with you?" and she says, "I'm fine." But you say it in a way that show him you're not fine. A lot of guys are going to think you are actually fine.
Yeah.
Because the word you used were "I am fine." In the guy world, we only use the words. The words are the meaning. And when you say the words "I am fine," that literally means "I am fine." But in your mind, you're saying, the way I communicate is a little bit different. It's, 10 p.m. I'm usually asleep by 10 p.m. I'm going to walk by his I don't know, walk by him reading a book, which I never do, and then look at him. And then he's going to ask me if I'm okay, and I'm just going to say I'm fine. That should let him know that I am really mad. Like, that's not how it works. Like, you're going to say you're fine, and the
You're
guy's going to
fine.
be like, oh, okay,
Right.
everything's good.
Nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong here. So you really have to think about talking a little bit more directly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure if guys can get the handle on the indirect stuff, but I don't know.
I think there's a point that we can reach, but if you're talking to a guy, you need to be direct and fairly blunt.
Yeah, we just don't have that context, nuance, communicative part of the brain as built up. It's just not as built up in our brain. That was the Battlefield number 12, out.